kitchen exhaust, it's pretty simple. If you have a kitchen, under today's code, you're going to need some type of exhaust fan. That can come in any type of different form, whether or not it's like a decorative hood. It could just be a little hood fan. It could be a micro hood where the microwave has a fan built into it. It could even just be a wall or a ceiling fan that meets the requirement for CFM. So it could come in all kinds of different forms. If you have an existing house, you're redoing your kitchen, and you're like, do I need to put in a exhaust fan? Well, technically under today's code, yes. If you have an existing situation where you just had a recirc, meaning that you had a hood fan and it went up into the hood and it went through a filter and then it shot back up into the house, you might be able to get away with just replacing it like for like. If you don't already have duct there, the inspector might be okay with you just leaving it as is. I would ask your mechanical inspector in your area if they're okay with it. I know in our area, in an existing situation, we would probably allow the recirc to stay. Instead of asking a homeowner to go tear apart walls or add a bunch of duct or whatever, because it was built without it and you're just making your kitchen better than it was. So that'd be kind of our take on it. If you are somewhere else, they might look at it a little differently. So I would just tell you to make sure that that you check with them. So let's look at the code. In a nutshell, like I said, if you got a kitchen, you need a fan. Well, what is a kitchen? Well, a kitchen is anything that's got an oven or a range in it. If you took the oven or range out, it'd be like a wet bar, right? It'd just be a sink and some cabinets, maybe a fridge. So once you put that oven in there, equals a kitchen, which then equals an exhaust fan. And that's kind of what the code book shows. So let's dive into that. So here we go. You can see it says kitchens. So it doesn't say that you need an exhaust fan for a range or an oven. It just says if you have a kitchen. So kitchens, you need 100 CFM intermediate or 25 CFM continuous. Most people put in an intermediate fan. Anytime you go to any of the box stores or anything like that, most all those fans that you find or the micro hoods that you find or even the decorative hoods are all going to be rated at 100 CFM plus. I don't see very often a 25 CFM continuous fan because if you think about it, if it's continuous, it means it's running all the time. So if it's not super quiet, you're hearing it. And two, it's sucking out heated or cooled air. So when you get into the energy side of things, you're having to heat or cool that air all the time that you keep sucking out. Even if it's at a minimal rate, it's like dollar bills flying out the exhaust. So a lot of people, you just stick with the one that's on the switch, you turn it on when you need it, and you should be good to go. Okay, so domestic cooking exhaust equipment. Domestic cooking exhaust equipment shall comply with the following requirements. So where domestic cooking exhaust equipment is provided, it shall comply with one of the following. So I'm going to quickly go over these. There's like 4 of them. But in a nutshell, it's just simply telling you that your exhaust equipment needs to be listed and labeled. And it needs to be in accordance with UL. And so that's kind of what it says here. The fan for overhead range hoods or downdraft exhaust. So downdraft would be like a range that has a built-in fan in it maybe, or maybe it's a secondary unit where you push a button and maybe the fan turns on. It's in the actual range, or something lifts up and it starts sucking air and maybe it goes down and into the floor system and out the wall instead of up above and it shoots out, through a roof or through a sidewall or something like that. So there's a couple more in here. Let's see, it's actually this one right here. I'll blow it up. Here's the other 3. You can read them here. So it just simply says that it must comply with UL 507. Here you must comply with UL 858. Here you must comply with UL 923. So it's a micro oven with integral exhaust. Put this up down here. Domestic cooking appliances with integral downdraft. So in a nutshell, just make sure whatever you get, it's been listed and labeled and tested by UL, which anything that you find at a box hardware store, it's going to have, the product's already going to be listed and labeled. The real thing is just to make sure, is it at least 100 CFM, and then make sure that it comes with all the proper equipment that you needed to hook it up. And so here they're talking about open top broiler exhaust. They're talking about clearances. A clearance of not less than 24 inches shall be maintained between the cooking surface and combustible material and cabinets. So, 24 inches. I don't see a lot of broiler, open top broilers where I'm at. So I don't know quite how that configuration might lay out. Typically, we see our cabinets around 18 inches or so above the counter. But then right under the hood, you have, you usually have a hood fan, or you have a micro hood, or you have something. So it's not combustible right underneath of it. And it's usually raised a few more inches above the bottom of the cabinets. But it's not a combustible material. But if you look down here, it says broiler units that incorporate an integral exhaust system. So maybe there's one built into it. And that are listed and labeled for use without an exhaust hood shall not be required to have an exhaust hood. So just make sure and check again, installation instructions, manufacturer installation instructions, and make sure you're covered. Come down here into domestic cooking exhaust equipment shall discharge to the outdoors through a duct. You don't want to take it into an attic or crawl space. If you are boiling, if you're cooking anything with moisture, you can imagine how much moisture is going up through that fan. If you pop it right into your attic, well, it's going to get moist up there and you're going to get mold and build up, and this would not be a good thing. So that's why they want it to go out to the exterior. It can either go out a wall or it can go out through the roof. It also says that it needs to be airtight. It needs to be a smooth interior surface, so solid, 28 gauge duct, not a flex duct. It's a smooth interior surface. Flex duct would be rigid, right? Smooth would be a solid pipe. And depending on size, it could be 6-inch, it could be an 8-inch. It just depends on the on what you bought for a hood. It's going to tell you what size you need to put in for duct. Usually, it says that it shall be equipped with a backdraft damper. Usually that damper comes with it. I know when I bought my micro hood, it had a damper that you set on the top. You screwed it in, and then that's where your duct attached to. And it's just a little metal flap in there that this flips up and down. Just keeps things from coming in and out. Just a requirement that it has. I've actually built brand new houses, and we've turned on the fan, and when the fan's running, you turn it off, and all of a sudden you hear it clink. You turn it on, goes up, turn it off, goes clink, and it just drives people nuts. So we've actually gone in and taken them out. Don't tell the inspector, but nobody wants to listen to that clinking noise. So you might want to test yours out before you get too far along. I would put it in. I would suggest having it there. Sometimes maybe you could put like a little rubber piece on there if it makes a bunch of noise so that it won't hit metal. It'll just hit a rubber piece. But just keep that in mind. So you should have a damper. It should be airtight. It should be smooth. It should go to the outside, not to attics or anything like that. Now it says in here, where installed in accordance with the manufacturer's installation instructions and where mechanical or natural ventilation is otherwise provided, listed and labeled ductless range hoods shall not be required to discharge to the outdoors. So again, that's the particular appliance that you have. So you'd have to read that and find out if that's allowed or not. Again, back to materials. It just say galvanized steel, stainless steel, or copper. Let's talk about Make-A-Bear. You should not, in most instances, especially on just residential houses, run into a situation where you need Make-A-Bear. I mean, you have to have a pretty big hood fan, which, in some really nice houses with really big hood fans, I could see that happening. But for most instances, do-it-yourselfers, you're putting in a micro hood, you're putting in, maybe a decorative hood that just kind of sits over the top of your range. It's not going to be over 400 CFM. But if it was, you'd be required to provide Make-A-Bear. Well, Make-A-Bear is essentially putting in some type of vent that would turn on or open up when you turn on your hood, so that when you exhaust out, you then bring in, because you're pulling out so much air, you need to bring some in. So if you're looking at hoods, look to make sure, if you don't want to put in any type of intake, type venting to bring fresh air in, make sure it's under 400 CFM. And that's what's right here in this code. Dwelling units, air barriers. So each exhaust system capable of exhausting in excess of more than 400 cubic feet per minute shall be mechanically or passively provided with makeup air. So, like I said, just try to make sure you're under 400 CFM and you should be good to go and not have to put in the makeup air requirement. Let's look at a few pictures here. Okay, so this isn't the best picture. This looks like an old used fan, but this would be an example of just having a fan up in your ceiling or on the side of your wall. You flip a switch, turns on, it's 100 CFM, sucks all of your hot boiling moisture out. It sucks out all the smells and all the cooking stuff that's required to, you know, send it out of the house. So when you're outside, someone's cooking bacon, you can smell the bacon. But anyways, here's just the standard fan. So if you had like a hood fan and it recirced and circled back up behind you, maybe up above you, you could have a fan up there and it could then take it out that way. Let's see here. This would be a kind of a quick little picture of kind of a decorative hood, and then the duct goes right up and probably goes out through the roof. That particular duct that's behind there is probably a 6-inch duct. I don't know for sure. And there's probably a damper that comes with it, and it probably sits right here. Again, it just depends on the appliance that you buy. Just keep in mind that, you know, put that damper in to meet the requirement. Here's another one. This is just like a standard hood. Nothing real super decorative about it. Turn it on. It probably, the duct either goes out the back wall or it goes up through the roof. And this would be kind of more like I see a lot in newer houses, and it's what it looks like in my house. It's not as nice as this, but you can see how the hood, the micro hood sits up a little higher than the cabinets, and it would either recirc right out through these vents and go up through a fan, or it would go through a duct, through sidewall, or up and out. Probably, like I said, a 6-inch. It'll come with the damper. And you just look at your instructions and install it per your instructions, and you should be good to go. Over to this little diagram here, so you can have an idea what I'm talking about. I just found this online, so it's not as legible as I would hope, but kind of gives you the general idea of either just venting it right out the back or venting it up through the roof, right? Ideally, you're going to vent it right out the back if you can, because it's the least amount of duct that it has to follow through to get outside. Going straight up and out, obviously, then it's going vertical. Hot air rises, so it's going to go right up and out, which is not the end of the world either. So what I did, another thing that I did was I just kind of went online and I just Googled like exhaust, so I can kind of give you an idea what they do in new houses a lot. Because if you're doing it on an exterior wall, what they'll do is, because they don't know exactly where that hood fan's going to sit, it might sit up higher or lower, or depending on how the cabinet's layout and where the range is. So what they'll do is they'll just put a chunk of pipe in or duct in the wall, and then when it comes time, they'll just cut an opening into the duct, and then they attach to it, and then the outside penetration can be anywhere in that duct, right? So I just kind of Googled it to see if I could find a picture, because I didn't have any of myself that I could show, but I want to make sure to give you an idea in case you're remodeling your house and you're like, I need to put one in, but I don't know where it's going to sit yet. So if you just think of this as an exterior wall, if you were to go put a chunk of duct like this in the wall between a couple studs, or maybe you even had to cut a stud or add a stud or do some type of header to head out, depending on how your layout was, if you put a piece of duct like this in the wall and then you drywalled it and you go on to your finish and you put your cabinets in and then you set your hood, well, anywhere in here, you cut through the drywall and then you cut into the duct, and then you just slap your micro hood or your hood fan up to it, and it can just vent into it. And then on the outside, you could have a penetration outside anywhere in the duct as well. So it maybe looks something like this, right? except for this could move. You know, you have your penetration out of the house, and then this is movable. You just tie into this duct anywhere you want. It'd be like taking one of these pieces and capping both ends and then just putting it in the wall. And then on the outside, you cut into the duct, and on the inside, you cut into the duct wherever your hood is, and you're good to go. That's just a thought if you're doing some type of kitchen remodel. Outside, I've seen these a lot on outside wall hood terminations outside. I've seen these a lot. I've seen these. So any type of termination would be fine depending on what it is that you're using. Make sure that they're rated for a wall or a roof, if you're whichever one that you're doing, and that they're the same size as the duct going out. So hopefully that kind of helps you out on exhaust for kitchen. Like I said, it really just boils down to, if you got a kitchen, you're going to need one. And whatever appliance you buy, you look at your installation instructions, it's going to tell you what your separations are that you need. Your oven, your range is going to tell you what kind of separations or distances that you're required to have. And you just follow the instructions. Make sure it goes all the way out. Make sure you got your damper in. And make sure your duct is smooth, not flex, and the size that's needed. Should be good to go.